It's a ToddCast Time Machine.
So it's the week of November 17th through the 23rd. And you know what I like to do? Go back in history, and we're just looking at these 7 days. And believe it or not, I stumbled onto what is Conspiracy Theory Week in American history. Three moments in particular have anniversaries this week. The Jonestown Massacre, the Kool-Aid drinking, November 18th, 1978. There's, of course, the JFK assassination, November 22nd, 1963. And the 18-and-a-half-minute gap in the Nixon tapes was revealed on November 21st, 1973. Three events that on their own would be enough to bend the country's imagination. But together, stacked on the same week of the calendar, I think they tell us something a bit more profound about why Americans believe conspiracies and why those beliefs are so durable. And by the way, this is also the same energy right now fueling our current national fixation on the Epstein files, where the fantastical spreads faster than any known fact. But we only have one type of person to blame: the elected American elected official, right? So let's get to the time machine. So we're going to start with Jonestown. That's when conspiracy thinking became catastrophic. We're going to go back to November 18th, 1978 in Jonestown. Now, a lot of people think of Jonestown as a cult tragedy, and it is, but it's also the story of how a closed information system can destroy human judgment. Jim Jones, the cult leader, didn't just isolate his followers physically. He isolated them psychologically, emotionally, and informationally. He convinced them that outsiders were coming to kill them. He convinced them that only he understood the truth. He convinced them that everyone else, from the media to the U.S. government, was lying. Perhaps he alone could fix it, but I digress. But here's the terrifying part. The more erratic Jones became, the more his followers trusted him. Because once you buy into this sort of total narrative, once you build your identity around a conspiratorial worldview, facts are no longer persuasive. Facts become evidence of the conspiracy against you. Jonestown is not a government conspiracy. It's the consequence of conspiratorial thinking. And it becomes a template, decades before social media, for how a charismatic figure can sever followers from reality and create a world where the fantastical is accepted without question. It's why QAnon didn't surprise psychologists. It's why people fall for online cults. Jonestown is a modern cautionary tale of what happens when people choose narrative over truth. My God, imagine how big Jonestown might have gotten with social media. All right, let's do the second, big conspiratorial event in our timeline this week. The conspiracy the public never accepted. 14 years earlier, the same week, November 22nd, 1963. John F. Kennedy is assassinated in Dallas. If Jonestown shows what happens when people buy into a false conspiracy, the JFK assassination shows what happens when the official story fails to convince the public. The Warren Report was assembled very quickly. The evidence was confusing. The single bullet theory sounded, well, pretty implausible to the average American. And the result was a permanent fracture in public trust. In fact, I always go back. I mean, if you look at the original sin of if you look at baby boomers today, right? They grew up with this. This was their coming of age moment, was government, they believed, lying to them about what happened to their president, right? And then just about every subsequent generation would have a little bit more of the government lying to them. And we chip away, chip away, chip away. But this was a big one because the generation before the baby boomers trusted their government. But for millions of Americans, JFK's death marks the moment when they stopped believing the government reflexively and started believing the government selectively. Not because they wanted a conspiracy, but because the government couldn't explain the tragedy in a way that felt complete, transparent, or sufficiently humble. This is where CIA theories, mafia theories, Castro theories, LBJ theories, deep state theories, they all began here. But the more important point is this. After JFK, Americans no longer needed evidence for a conspiracy. They only needed doubt. JFK didn't create the conspiracy culture, but it created the psychological conditions for the next event that did.
Do you hate hangovers? Well, say goodbye to hangovers. Out of Office gives you the social buzz without the next day regret. Their best-selling Out of Office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz, boost your mood, and enhance creativity and relaxation. With 5 different strengths, you can tailor the dose to fit your vibe. From a gentle 1.5 milligram micro dose to their newest 15 milligram gummy for a more elevated experience. Their THC beverages and gummies are a modern, mindful alternative to a glass of wine or a cocktail. And I'll tell you this, I've given up booze. I don't like the hangovers. I prefer the gummy experience. Soul is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. Soul specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products, all designed to boost your mood and simply help you unwind. And if you struggle to switch off at night, Soul has a variety of products specifically designed to help you get a better night's rest, including their top-selling Sleepy Gummies. It's a fan favorite for deep, restorative sleep. So bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Soul today. Right now, Soul is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. So go to getsoul.com, use the promo code ToddCast. Don't forget that code. That's getsoul.com, promo code ToddCast for 30% off.
And that brings us to a year that still feels like a wound. It's 1973. The Nixon tape gap, the conspiracy that was a conspiracy. It was true. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, November 21st, 1973, America learns that there is an 18-and-a-half-minute gap in one of Nixon's Oval Office tapes, the very tape that might have shown what he knew about Watergate. This is the moment that permanently rewires the American brain. After years of being told, trust us, after years of dismissing accusations as partisan, and after years of insisting that critics of Nixon were hysterical, here it was, a missing tape. Not metaphorically, literally an erased tape. Thank you, Rosemary Woods. And the White House explanation was so implausible, secretaries accidentally leaning on pedals, fingers slipping, that it practically invited conspiracy. The lesson for the American public was brutal and simple. Sometimes the conspiracy theory is true, and sometimes the cover-up is even dumber than the crime. And once that happens, once government credibility is broken in this specific way, you don't get it back through press releases, you don't get it back through official investigations, and you don't even get it back through prosecutions. And of course, we never did prosecute. You know, I think when I first started my TimeCast Time Machine, I started with the pardon, with Ford's pardon, and a mistake. I think now we see that was clearly, I don't think it's even a close call anymore, that was clearly a mistake. Because we never did get justice for what was done. But Watergate taught Americans that powerful people sometimes lie, and institutions sometimes protect those lies. And once you know that, you never unknow it. And then it just sort of sits there. And it chips away, and we wonder why we have a government we don't trust today. So let's look at sort of the modern parallel, right? The Epstein files. Fast forward to the present, and conspiracy is the default. It's not the exception. Just look at this Epstein moment we're all living through. People assume elites lie. People assume institutions are hiding things. People assume the truth is always worse. And people assume if there is a conspiracy, it's probably bigger and darker than anything the government admits. Now, I'm an Occam's razor person. I think if there was something even darker or deeper, there'd at least be a leak about it somewhere, but we haven't gotten that. But still, conspiracies persist. But it's because of Jonestown, because of JFK, because of Nixon, because of Iraq WMDs, because of the NSA surveillance revelations, because of January 6th. Americans now process every new event through a lens shaped by generations of government betrayal, government confusion, and partial truths at best. So just look at what we did with Epstein, right? The conspiracy theory arrived first. The facts we still don't have all the facts, do we? They're arriving later. The public decides what it believes before the evidence even begins to land. It's not that people want to believe insane things. It's that the factual world is moving slower than the fantastical one. We have more information than ever, but we have less trust than ever. And in that environment, speculation fills every gap instantly. And then you look at our ridiculous algorithms that sort of reward those that have a new theory rather than those that have factual information. Right? If I were to say right now, boy, it's got to be that Ghislaine Maxwell knows the origin story of Melania Trump and how Melania and Donald met. Boy, the algorithms would go crazy, and this video could go viral because I'd say that. I have no evidence of this. Okay, I certainly am trying to figure out why the president is hiding so much of this and why he seems to be so scared of Ghislaine Maxwell. So your mind wanders. And unfortunately, because of how poor government's been about being transparent about things, including the JFK assassination being, frankly, Exhibit A, how do you tell an American not to go down that conspiratorial rabbit hole? This is where we are. So what do we take away from this in This Week in American History? Here's the common thread. We are conspiracy prone, not because we're gullible, but because our institutions have repeatedly given us enough reason, just enough reason, to suspect that we're not being told the full story. When leaders lie, even tiny lies, they leave behind just enough ambiguity for our collective imagination to go to work. And when institutions are slow, opaque, or even arrogant, doubt becomes a form of self-defense. When information drips out instead of flows out, the vacuum fills the narrative. And when the official story doesn't feel complete, the unofficial ones become irresistible. So I'll leave you with this. We Americans can handle plenty of bad news. What we cannot handle is missing news. You got to tell us everything. Don't hold back, because if you do, if we find out and you held back, it is so much worse. The more that institutions give us half-truths, delayed truths, redacted truths, or contradictory truths, or alternative facts, the more This Week in History becomes every week in our political system. So there you go. Enjoy Conspiracy Week in the ToddCast Time Machine. There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. And Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/Toddcast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win.